is June Anderson, and I am going to talk to you about fungus in the soil today. I chose this topic because I didn't know a whole lot about decomposition or how soil smells the way it does because of fungus. So I wanted to research that further and understand it better for myself. So I hope by the end of this you might have a little bit more of an inkling of what is going on with fungus in our soils. So for starters, fungi can be broken up into three different categories: decomposers, mutualists, and parasites. I'll go ahead and start with decomposers because it is the largest group, and they are defined as microscopic cells that usually grow as long as threads or strands, which develop into hyphae, and the hyphae push their way between soil particles, roots, and rocks to kind of aerate the soil and seek out decaying matter. So the hyphae branch into filaments that make up the mycelium of a fungus, and they're only micrometers long, but in diameter they can grow into large masses. And mycelium is defined as the vegetative part of fungus, which consists of a network of white filaments. And if you look in the background, I know there's text box over it, but you can kind of see these little filaments which make up large swaths of mycelium. And in this picture, if you can't tell, it kind of looks like interwoven root mats, but they all have a vast number of arrangements that vary in appearance depending on the species. And as we know, fungus come in all different shapes and sizes and colors and even textures. But one of the most noticeable visual fungi that we see are mushrooms. And the part of the mushroom or the mycelium that we see is the fruiting structure. And usually those types of fungi produce through spores, and they do assist with breaking down decaying matter. But the heavy hitters of decomposing the O horizon and the last bit of organic matter that's really tough, like lignin and cellulose, which is just fancy words for wood and the plant cell walls, are actually known as saphotrophs. They can be found around wood, so often forested lands host these types of fungi. Saphotrophs eat the remaining organic matter in an ecosystem by releasing a special enzyme called hydrolytic enzymes to digest organic remains and then absorb the resulting compounds, which release usable nutrients into the soil for plant uptake. The hyphae play an important role because it has a high surface to area volume ratio, meaning it travels wide and fast, and can move deep into places using their hyphal tips to reach decomposing matter and breaking down the tissues. And a saphotroph fruiting body you may recognize and may have seen in your time is an oyster mushroom or a shiitake mushroom. But in return, this process recycles the minerals and the nutrients such as organic acids, carbon, proteins, lipids, and it even breaks down pollutants. And in turn, this has the ability to create humic acids. And humic acids are so important because they are the molecules that bind together that help plant roots uptake the water and the nutrients and fight against leaching. And they're also essential for healthy root systems. Some of the saphotrophs also have varieties that can act like simple sugars like bacteria do, and can be beneficial to a system because decomposing bacteria generally only survive on the exposed surface. So those simple sugars that bacteria have don't get down into the surface to provide that specific type of nutrient. But when all of this kind of comes together, it forms a glue and it binds the soil together. And one of the special proteins and minerals that makes this soil aggregate is called glomalin. This benefits the soil by increasing water retention and filtration, and specifically by maintaining pores and channels in the soil for air and water to enter and move through the soil. There are even fungi that will assist plants with living in these soils to uptake the nutrients and water, and those are called mutualists, which is aptly named because they help bridge the gap among the processes of decomposition and nutrient uptake between the organisms. It's a beneficial relationship that's formed with the fungus and the plant roots, and it's called mycorrhizae. For example, fungi don't have chlorophyll, and therefore photosynthesis doesn't take place. But during photosynthesis, plants convert air into carbon dioxide and water into glucose, which is something the fungi can't do. But fungi can aid the plants in providing water and making uptake more efficient by either growing around the root cell or just growing directly into the root cell. And then, once a plant processes the water the fungi has provided, it burps out the glucose, and then the mycorrhiza just intakes the glucose. And fungi use glucose as a form of carbon and energy, which helps them solubilize phosphorus and bring soil nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen into the rhizosphere. The rhizosphere is where the root party happens, and I like to call it a root party because it's the zone around the plants which chemicals exchange within the soil and the root. And I like to think of it as like a little rave. But the rhizosphere is a vital area because it acts as the first line of defense to protect against pathogens and parasites. And if plants are healthy and they're in healthy soils, which are created by fungi, they should often have enough quality nutrients and clean water to fight off any assailants. So the rhizosphere can uptake the minerals to provide the plant with enough energy and nutrients to produce warning chemicals, which can produce odoriferous smells, bitter tastes, or sticky, burning, stinging saps or fluids to protect itself from harm. Some plants even have mechanisms like a Venus flytrap, which will entrap its assailants should it linger for too long and just digests it. But plants can't protect themselves against parasites and pathogens if it doesn't have enough proper nutrients. And those types of assailants are called the parasitic fungi. So while mutualists assist and can protect plants, parasitic fungi can cause serious economic loss to our crops, and it has the potential to cause mass starvation. It has the potential to ruin our trees for logging and things like that. So it can become a very serious thing. Parasitic fungi even lives on humans. But the fungal parasites need living hosts, to survive and leach nutrients from via invading the cytoplasm and consuming until the host rids itself of the parasite or the host dies. This usually results in damage, temporary or permanent impairment, depending on how serious it is, or just death. Parasitic fungi can enter an organism through a natural opening like a stoma, a lenticule, broken plant hairs, or even a wound, and the root system. A study conducted by 2 individuals studied fungal growth and spore production in 2 different types of soil to see their effects on 3 different fungi. So it's called A. flavus, verticillioides, and penicillium. And essentially what they were doing was giving some of the tests glucose and some not, to see what would happen to the total carbohydrate content level as well as the dehydrogenase and amylase activities. And they actually found that glucose played a very vital role for parasitic fungi to grow, and the petri dishes that contained no glucose actually stunted growth anywhere from 21 to 44%. So this is probably the largest driving factor for why parasitic fungi target plants to feed off their glucose. So I hope this helps you understand a little bit more about what's going on under there and why it happens and just kind of the ins and outs of it. I'm hoping that this kind of leads you to do a little bit more research or just to experiment outside, turn over rocks and look at dirt and soil, and you might find some fungi. And I just want to acknowledge my cohort for what an awesome 2 years this has been. You're all some of the brightest individuals that I've ever had the opportunity to learn with, and I wish you all the luck on your endeavors this summer. I look forward to seeing some of you back next fall, and for those who are moving on, I know you're going to crush whatever goals you set in front of yourselves. So I hope you find exactly what you're looking for out of the natural resources world, and I hope you keep in touch. Thank you for a great year.